Scream 6, it's the 6th one of the franchise, which is crazy to think that we had 3 within, 4 years, then we waited 11 for the 4th, 11 for the 5th, and now just a year for the 6th. It's a quick turnaround. It's the second one of this version of the Legacy sequel, the next generation of Scream victims, and I gotta say, this franchise is still really doing it. My history with the Scream franchise is interesting because I grew up loving the first. And I kind of avoided the sequels for many years because I always heard they just weren't that great. Should not have listened to that because they're all very solid and they all do very interesting things. The one thing you can always count on with the Scream franchise, well, maybe 2 things. One is that the killer's going to be new every single movie, which is a very fun mystery to try to identify what is the trope they're going to follow in this film. And that's the second thing you can always count on, is that it's always going to be this meta-commentary on horror tropes. The first one obviously being on horror movies in general, the second one being on sequels. The third is my least favorite of the franchise, so I don't even honestly remember what really the meta-commentary was. The fourth talked a lot about toxic fandom and this need for internet fame. And then, of course, the last one was very heavy on the difference between the Scream franchise and elevated horror, and how to do a Legacy sequel. Now, this one definitely continues that trend of Legacy sequels, but honestly, I think the meta-commentary is held back a little bit, and I think I enjoyed it a lot more for that. Clearly, it's still there, and there's a lot that it's saying about this genre, and a lot that it's saying about the characters and who the killer might be. And if anything, I think the overarching theme of where the meta is leaning in on is franchises as a whole, which I think is a very unique take. But with any kind of meta commentary, I always struggle with the balance where, yes, you can be ironic, but there comes a point where you're so ironic that you're actually just becoming the thing you think you're poking fun at. You can't always have your cake and eat it too, and that was definitely my issue with the last Scream movie, where yes, you're establishing that, hey, we are different than all this elevated horror. We're not just another Legacy sequel, but then you actually become that thing. And just because you are self-aware about it doesn't excuse you from making those same mistakes that other movies do. And I don't think this film really fully falls into that trap. I think every piece of self-awareness is valid here, and it does actually add something to the conversation of what we do with these tropes. This film, I think, is also much more grounded in the relationships and interpersonal connections with all the characters, whether it's friends, family, friends that become family, and all the characters throughout the entire Scream franchise, as they share this one common denominator, that they went through this horrific event, all with different killers going under the name of Ghostface. And so for that reason, this film felt like it had so much more heart. It wasn't just about these victims running away from a killer, but it was actually the consequences that these people face having survived a lot of these events. The last movie, I was not really sold on Sam being the new lead, especially replacing Sydney, but in this movie, she really sold me, and I felt a lot more connection to her character, and I feel much more comfortable with her moving forward in future movies. And of course, Jenna Ortega is crushing it. Other than that, the rest of the cast does a really great job. I cannot tell you how exciting it is to see Hayden Panettiere back on the film screen. If you did not grow up surrounded by pop culture in the mid to late 2000s, you might not feel the same nostalgic feeling that I had seeing her face right there. But it felt so good, and I really hope that this leads to her getting more roles either in movies or TV. Some other things that stood out with this specific Scream film, I thought Ghostface was especially vicious in this film. Maybe it helps that the setting is in New York, but this allowed for him to do much more creative things that we haven't always seen in previous films. He felt stronger, quicker, utilizing different weapons. He just felt like this constant menace that you could not escape. As far as New York as a setting goes, I think this was a great creative decision. We had to get away from California. I do hope they continue this trend because it offers a lot of creative decisions, especially with the set pieces. Moving away from houses and going to apartments, having this exist in Central Park and the subway. It's all very exciting, and I think New York itself becomes a character, and I love when movies are able to do that. As far as the plot goes, I think I feel similar to a lot of the Scream movies, where once the reveal happens, I'm always left a little disappointed because I think my mind wanders to what could be. And I think it ends on a strong note, and it makes a whole lot of sense thinking back in hindsight. But there's always going to be opportunity within these films to overthink it and realize how the plot doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so as long as it captures the theme and essence of what it wants to communicate, which I felt it did, I'm okay with where it landed. I know I'm buzzing off a high right now just getting out of the theater, but I honestly want to put this as my second favorite Scream movie right after the first one. That could change later on, so I'm not solidifying that as a matter of fact. But I thought this film was an absolute blast. The theater was packed. A lot of people were excited to see this. So I would highly recommend that you're into horror movies at all. You should go see this film, and you should get on board with where this franchise is going. So that's Scream 6. Have you seen it? What do you think? Comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I will see you next time.